Okay, I'll put the video later on. The stream failed, but I'm gonna record locally. So we have this tree. So if we build, let's go back here. So as I was saying, we have in the developer tools we have the console. We can execute any JavaScript. Now here I want to show you the document object. So we saw the window object. Now I want to show you the document object. Now if I do that, I hit enter. I get this. You can see that even when I hover over it, it shows me what it is. Like it highlights it in the window. And here I'm looking at this, but this doesn't look like a JavaScript object, does it? Why doesn't it look like a JavaScript object? Or like, how can you tell that doesn't look like a JavaScript object? Let's look at the window object. The window object looks like a JavaScript object. Correct, because document, like when I type document and I hit enter and it's giving me the HTML code. And this might be confusing behavior. This is the browser saying, oh, maybe you don't want the JavaScript object, that's too big, I'm gonna just show you the HTML. For some reasons, somewhere in the documentation there must be a reason for why they decided to do it that way. Let's see if I do console log document. Let's see if it gives me the JavaScript representation. No, it still gives me the HTML representation of the object. So here is also worth noting that the browser has sort of two representations of elements in the web page. One is the HTML representation with all its tags, and the other one is the JavaScript representation, which is the elements in the DOM, right? The elements in the DOM are objects. They have properties and methods, right? So a way for you to get the JavaScript representation is with console.dir. This one we haven't used. It's practically the same as console log, but when we do document, let's see if, okay, now we got the console.dir will give us the JavaScript representation of an element, and when I expand that, we can see that now it looks like a JavaScript object. Is that clear? How we have like sort of two representations of the same element in a web page? We have how it looks in HTML and how it will look from JavaScript, or like the JavaScript representation. One is the HTML code and the other one is the DOM element. So we can see that, again, the document is at the top. For instance, it has a URL. This URL is what we see in the URL of the browser. We have a bunch of other stuff. This is like a huge object. It has a bunch of properties. One of the most interesting ones is children. Children is interesting because, as we said, if we go back to that representation here, the document will have one child, which is the HTML, and the HTML has two childs, the head and the body. Let's see if we can find those if we go from here. So we have document, which is the top level. Let's see the property children. Children. Now it says, you see the children property looks like an array, right? It has square brackets, and it has only one thing inside, something called HTML. Now, at index 0, we see the HTML. Even if I hover over it, it will highlight over there. So I'm going to click on 0, and then now this is the HTML object. The HTML object has a bunch of other properties. Has also a base URL, has like children element count. You see this children element count too? Going back to this graphic, does it make sense? How many childs does the HTML have? 2. The body and the head. So if we keep going, we should be able to even find the H1 here. So we're in the HTML now. We could look at the children, what it looks like now. Look at, it has an array that with the head and the body. Those are the 2 children. If I could go down into the body is this other huge object that also will have children. Look at the children of the body, H1. Let's go to the H1. This is the H1. You see, even when I hover over it, it highlights in the window. And these are all the properties of the H1. If we look at this, somewhere we'll find inner text. Inner text is what the H1 will display. Okay, so that was interesting how from the document we could get to all of them. So let's do this. Let's see what do I have here. Okay, so the document object gives us, besides properties, it also has methods, and it will allow us to instead of having to go like down this sort of rabbit hole that I went by just expanding the properties of one object to the other. What we could have is if we give this H1 tag an ID, the document will allow us to grab it with that ID. So let's do that. Go on the HTML. I'm going to add an ID to the header H1 tag, and I say ID. I'm gonna call it main header. Oh. I'm gonna give this H1 an ID called main header. Now let's refresh our page. Let's inspect first in the Elements tab. Expand the body and see that your header H1 indeed has an ID. Everyone has the ID? Okay, so once we have an ID, we could get this header, the object that represents this header, using JavaScript. So what we can do for that is, let's go back to the console. Now here, the document, a giant object, a bunch of properties, a bunch of methods. If you want to find all of them, you could go to the documentation, or you could also experiment here by doing document that and then exploring all of this. There is a really long list. One of the methods that we are going to be using is a method called getElementById. This is a method, it's a function that is expecting you to pass in an ID of an element, and it will go to that tree and it will search over all the elements in that tree, and it will give you that element if the ID matches. So we can do this here. Get element by ID is expecting a string that will be the ID of the element you're looking for. And I'm going to look for main header. Now, if I hit enter, I get the H1. Now here, I'm getting the sort of HTML representation. You see that we don't see the object with keys and or we don't see the object with properties, right? If we want, let's do this. Let's create a variable. Let my header is equal to document dot get element by ID. Main header. Remember that this method in the document object will go over that tree, finding all the elements, and if the ID matches the ID that we passed to get element by ID, it's going to return back to us that object, that node, that element. So let's do that, and then with this, we're just saving the return value of this function. We're saving it to a variable called myHeader. Right? Is that clear? Now, if I could do console log myHeader. And I get the same. I get my header, but I'm not getting the JavaScript representation. I'm getting the HTML representation. And sometimes you want that, but for what we are interested here is in looking at this header, in looking at the object representation of this header. So we could do that if we do console dot. How could we get the JavaScript representation to the console? Douglas? There, that's correct, dir. My header. Hit enter. I get this. I expand that, and then I have properties which are key value pairs. And look at how big the header is. Like, it's not a small object. It has a ton of properties. And one of these properties is outer text, outer HTML, what else? Tag name, text content. There should be also an inner text, I think. Inner text. Any questions here so far? Let's take a 5-minute break. Yes. Oh. At the top. Oh, so that node is coming from console logs one. I see. I see. So that's no worries. The reason that we haven't seen is, you remember when I was trying to say HTML is top spot, right? So the thing is, HTML is going through your website or through this HTML document, and then it arrives here. So there is once we have an external JavaScript that we sort of import and link to this HTML, we can say to, when we do that import, we can say wait for the DOM to load and then execute. So there's a way to do that. I forgot. So Okay, so we saw how we can grab the element, and I was executing this JavaScript code in the console directly, right? But everything that you could execute in the console directly, we could also do in the script tag. So let's see this. Let's actually have this code that I wrote in the console. I'm gonna write it in my script tag. So I'm gonna do let my header is equal to document dot get element by ID, and I'm going to do main header. Oh, also one more thing is here, sort of as a side note, in the web. So we have this h1 with an attribute called ID, right? We remember what attributes are in HTML elements. What are some attributes of the img tag? Source, right? And a tag has href attributes. I can also have ID and class. So in HTML, it's allowed, but it's not good practice to set a camel case ID. So this, I just have I'm doing a bad practice here by giving this ID camel case. In HTML, it's better practice to do what is called as snake case, or just separated by underscore main header. Again, it's allowed, but it's just not good practice to have camel case. Okay, so if we do this, nothing really changed. We just changed the ID, right? But now, also I want a console log or console.dir, bless you, my header. So this is what I just typed in my console a few minutes ago. And we were able to see that we can have my header, and we could get the JavaScript representation, the object representation of this header with all its properties, keys, and values. Now, kind of going back to, let me clear this. This is going to attempt to get an element by ID with this ID. Whatever element matches this ID should be returned, right? And we're going to save that to my header, right? Oh, this here. Now let's look at what we have once we refresh the page. I'm refreshing the page, and we have a console log that says no. And it says that console log is coming from index.html line 7. Index.html line 7, that's this line. But why is it null? I was expecting to see the header object. Douglas?
Is it because it's reading top to bottom and it hasn't been defined yet?
Correct. Because HTML still reads top to bottom. HTML is sort of reading this file, gets to the script, it executes the script. After the script is done, then it executes like the body. It interprets the body after. What happens here is the body hasn't even been made, and I'm already trying to grab an element from it. So this was the demonstration that I wanted to do earlier with the alert, but it didn't work with the alert because that was too fast. So here we can see that we say in web development, we say the DOM has not loaded yet. If we have this script here, because again the body and the h1 hasn't even been made. So there is a way in which you can have a script in the head, and you cannot tell the script wait until the DOM is loaded, and then after that it will work. That would be one strategy. Another strategy is what I said earlier, which is move the script to the last part of the body. Like that. Let's give me 1 second. Let's run this again. And now instead of null, we have the object. So what happens is, yes? Yes, you can have more than one script at the same time. Here, oh, Chuck, you had a question. Can you put the script outside of the body? That's a good question. Did you try it? Did it work? That's it. I don't think it works. I'm going to put it outside of the body, but still inside the HTML. Oh, still works. Still works. I will say this is not that good practice, since I haven't seen it ever, to have a script like outside of the body inside HTML. In fact, like writing scripts inside like direct HTML, the way that we're doing it here, is not that common. Like oftentimes we just write the JavaScript in a different file, and then we link it to the HTML. For now, this is fine that we're writing HTML in the script. And for quick websites, this is totally fine. Okay, so here, what I wanted to reiterate is, when we had the script in the head, that DOM tree that we saw was not even made yet, because it's reading top to bottom. So if you try to find an element with ID main header in a tree that doesn't even exist, then you get null, because you didn't find anything because there was nothing to find. Once we move that script to the bottom of the body, that tree has already some nodes in it. It will have the h1 in it already, and then we could grab it. We document get element by ID. Any questions here, comments, thoughts, feelings? Lewis?
So if you do have a script within the body of your HTML, you probably want to just keep it at the very bottom of it, just so you incorporate everything above.
Correct. If your script needs anything from the DOM, which most likely will, if it needs any element, you should put it at the bottom, or at least after that element has been made. Right? Like if I switch h1 to the bottom here, what am I gonna get? No. Great. Hasn't been made yet. Okay, so let's put it back in here. Any other questions? Savita? Does that affect alert? Mhm. So the answer is it will affect it. It's just that it's so fast that we don't notice it. That's what I was trying to do before, where I wanted to see if the H1 will display first, and then the alert will be on top of that. I don't know if you remember that. When the first alert that we saw, I've had the script in the head, and then I said it's because the head will be read first. We don't even see, and the browser just waits for you to hit OK on the alert. The HTML or the header was not even showing behind the alert. And then I tried to move the alert to after the body to see if the header will show behind the alert, because now it's supposed to the header should have been made first before the alert, but it happens so fast that the DOM hasn't finished loading when the alert runs. Here's this. I'm not exactly sure about this, but I think the DOM will be made first, and after you have that tree, then you display it. So I guess let's try to see this. Let's console this, and then I'm going to do window.alert. Hello. Right. So okay, here we could demonstrate whether the DOM is made first and then it's displayed to the user, or whether it's displayed first and then the DOM is made. So what we had before is, once I do this, I do refresh, see that the heading doesn't appear, right? Once I hit OK, it appears, but it's not that I hit OK and then after it appears. It's just that the DOM hasn't finished loading. Wait, no, the DOM did finish loading, but the part of the browser that's displaying the content hasn't finished. And first we get the alert. So we can say the alert will win the displaying of the information. The DOM, I believe the DOM has been made, and we are able to grab that H1 element, even though it's not displaying yet, because the alert is faster than the displaying. So let's verify that if I do this. What if I do console.alert my header? So remember that the alert will pop up and the H1 is not showing behind it, right? So that could make us think, oh, the H1 is not even made yet. So this is experimentation. I encourage it for you to do it as well. Here we want to verify if the DOM, if that tree was made, and if we have the header once we do alert, and if we want to find out if it's just that the DOM is made, but it's just not displaying yet. Because first the DOM is made, and then the browser will display. So let's find out. Here I'm just trying to, again, grab the header. In the screen we see that the header is not showing up. So we could think that it's not made yet. But I suspect that it's being made. It's just that the DOM is made first and then the display. And then the alert is winning sort of against the display. So let's try this. Refresh. And we have object HTML heading element. We don't get the JavaScript representation here. We just get this. But we could say Let's window.alert header inner text. So let's refresh. Now it says HTML and JavaScript. This is the text that's in the header. So this confirms that the DOM is made first and then is displayed. Internally, the browser will create this tree that represents the document, and once that tree has been made, then it's shown, the content is shown. Does that make sense? So here, the DOM was made and they can access that element, it's just not displayed yet. And my browser is stuck in window.alert because it's just waiting for me to click OK for doing the next thing. And the next thing is displaying the DOM, displaying the elements, or what we call rendering the elements. Any questions here? So you can think of the browser is reading your HTML. Before it displays it. It reads it, it creates a tree out of all the elements that you can grab and manipulate with JavaScript. And then after that tree was made and was put somewhere in the memory of your computer, that tree is displayed or as the document. Any questions, comments? Everyone is like, what was that? We don't the only thing that we need to remember is that HTML still reads top to bottom, and that you may not try to access something before it's created in the DOM. Oftentimes, I'll say 99% of the times, you want your JavaScript to interact with the DOM, therefore you have to wait until the DOM is created. A way to wait until the DOM is created is having that script tag at the bottom of the body. And there are other ways to wait. But this one is the most useful for now. Okay, let's see what's next. Still using the document. Let's do one more. Actually, let's take 5 minutes and you are going to do this. Create, don't copy and paste. Create an H1, my website, and type all this on your document. And then write a script in a script tag. Grab those two p tags with get element by ID and alert the inner text of those elements. Is that clear? Create 2 paragraphs, give them an ID, put some text inside, and then in a script tag, grab those elements with get element by ID and alert the inner text. Okay, how did that go? Went well? Thumbs up if it went well. What if it went more or less? Not many. Okay. Cool. Here I wanted to show you this image that I found about what I was explaining earlier about how the DOM is created first and then is displayed. Here's basically how it works. You have the HTML code, then your browser creates the DOM. Then the DOM can be accessed from JavaScript. That's what we're doing, like grabbing element by ID. And then after the DOM has been created, the browser will do something called like render that tree or display the content. Right? What happens is that when we have our window.alert, we were sort of blocking this arrow here. Our window.alert was displaying the element that came from the DOM, but that element was not displayed in the screen yet, because that will be the next step. So our JavaScript was sort of had this line on hold. Once we hit OK, then this line resumes, and then this happens, which is display the header. And there's other stuff that happens, like where that header is going to go and what color that header will have. Okay, so let's go back to one. Yeah, like I was looking at, there was a nice animation here. This one, no, this is CSS. I cannot find it, but basically the process that I showed earlier was what was going on. Okay, so we were able to grab elements. The good thing about get element by ID is that it doesn't matter how deep into this tree the element is, you're always able to grab it. And we're gonna get, once we see more data structures and algorithms, we can start to imagine how that actually happens. It's going to like look at that tree, finding the element if it exists. Let's see what else do we have here. We were able to do that. So everyone was able to do basically this: grab the welcome paragraph and then alert the inner text. In this case, let's see what this gives us. I'm allowed to copy and paste because I already typed this many times. Oh, I forgot to type. Let's see what this gives us. Refresh this page over here. The welcome paragraph element is object HTML paragraph element. And in here is, we don't see the actual object, we don't see the properties with the keys and the values, because window.alert doesn't know how to display those. Console log can, but window.alert is not that smart. And it's not used for like seeing the internals of how JavaScript or a JavaScript object looks. So, okay, the important thing was that we were able to do that. Now, now we know how to get elements. And there are a few other ways in which you can get elements. More recently, we got in addition to get element by ID, we have another method called document.query selector. Let's see that one. Let's also grab the welcome paragraph. I'm gonna comment this one. Document.query selector. This. The query selector is similar to get element by ID, but it's a little bit more flexible. It allows to not only get elements by ID, but also by other attributes, like a class. And I don't remember exactly if it would allow us to grab, let's see. Query selector, what happens when I do this? The selector, right? It will allow me to grab. It is more flexible. It just not only allows me to grab elements by ID, but by other attributes as well, like source. If we wanted to grab an image that has a specific source, we could grab it with this as well. We can grab it by ID, or by class, or even by just saying an image. I could just grab, for instance, in this case, we know that we only have one H1, right? If we do that, then I could do H1. This will grab me the H1. So, well, that wouldn't be really the welcome paragraph. That will be the header. But let's see if this works, just to make sure. Or maybe let's do it this way, so that you can see the code. See, now it says welcome paragraph element. Well, not really the paragraph. The header element is object HTML heading element. So just keep that in mind, that query selector is another way to get elements from the DOM. If I want to get an element by an ID, I'll need to do, I think it's period. I don't remember exactly. Let's see. Let's do the welcome paragraph. That's it. Oh, the welcome paragraph element is null. That means I'm not grabbing it correctly. So if it's not period is for classes then. Pound sign or hashtag is for IDs. Now we get welcome paragraph is an HTML paragraph object. This is kind of small and I cannot zoom in here. So just keep that in mind. Query selector is another way in which you can grab elements from the DOM. It's more flexible. Yeah. So if you want to grab an element by ID, you just need to do pound sign or whatever you call this. That actually has an interesting lexical name, but I don't remember it. Pound sign, hashtag, and then the ID. Okay. So we were able to do that. Now, what if we want to add content? What if we want to add up another paragraph? What if we want to have let's say a third paragraph, but I want that paragraph to be, I could just write it here, but I don't want to write it sort of manually. I want JavaScript to do it for me. Let's say I want, welcome to my website. Thank you for visiting. What would be another paragraph that we could do here? Let's just add one paragraph that has my name for now. I want to add a paragraph here either at the bottom or in between these two paragraphs, but I don't want to write it in HTML. I want to use JavaScript to create that HTML and add it to the DOM. Let me just make sure that that's actually where we're heading. Oh, okay, so rather than adding, we're just modifying. So let's see that first. Let's modify one of these paragraphs. Which one should we modify? The header, the welcome paragraph, or the last paragraph? Which one do you think? Which one do you want to modify? Let's modify the welcome paragraph. Let's change this welcome from welcome to bonjour. That's French for welcome, is that correct? So no? Let's say? Oh, welcome. Bienvenue. I don't know how to pronounce that. So let's change that welcome from that to bienvenue. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is grab the element, right? Grab the element that we want to change. So let's do it with the get element by ID. We'll compare. Here we're just getting that element. Because this element, this node, this object is just a JavaScript object, we can modify the values that the keys are holding. Just like when in an Apple object, you can change the type or change the color, right? If you had an Apple object. It's the exact same thing here. You have the document or the welcome paragraph, and you can modify properties of that paragraph. So I'm going to do what I want to modify is a property called inner text that holds the actual text that this paragraph is showing. Let me show you that in console.log or console.dir, because log will give me the HTML representation, dir gives me the object, welcome element parent. Let's see that here. Now let's refresh. Oh, no, we have that alert. Let's comment out the alert for now. I'm refreshing, and now if I do to the console here, and I put it on the right, go to the console. I have my console log in the paragraph that has an ID welcome paragraph. And then again, this is an object, so if I expand it, I can see all the properties. Here, I can find that there are these properties, inner HTML and inner text, that actually has the text that the paragraph is displaying. This is the text that I want to change. So just like changing any property on an object, I could do welcome para dot inner HTML, or inner text is more appropriate. Is that correct? So I'm going to change that bienvenue. I'm gonna steal to my website. So I'm just changing the value of that property from welcome to my website to bienvenue to my website. Now let's save that as refresh our page. And now it displays bienvenue instead of welcome. And this happens, it looks like bienvenue was there from the get-go, but it wasn't. It's just that it happened so fast. First it was welcome, then the DOM was made. Once the DOM was made, our program went and grabbed that paragraph and it changed the inner text from welcome to bienvenue, and then it displayed bienvenue. This happens really fast that it looks like bienvenue was there from the start. But in fact, we could do this. Console log welcome para.inner text here, and let's console log it after. I'm console logging the inner text of the welcome paragraph before I change it and after. Now let's see in the console. I saved, then I refresh, and I will see it changing. From welcome to my website to bienvenue to my website. Any questions here before we go to lunch? Yes, do list.
You see, welcome element paragraph in your text to a different variable, and then call that variable, or reassign that variable with a different text. But you have to go say something different while still assuming the original welcome paragraph.
Say that one more time.
So if my desire is to keep the website unaltered so that
Okay.
the paragraph stays the same, but the alerts to something different, I mean, while still roughly doing the same dance around.
So
that's so I think I would just let it know.
So you will want to, let's say you want to keep the original paragraph because maybe you want your website to be in French and in English, and you have a button that switches between the two, right? And then maybe you don't want to replace the content, you just want to kind of switch it, right? Keep one paragraph that's in English and the other one which is in French. So you could do that, and there is I think the document has a method called clone node that will allow you to make a copy of any node. And then you could modify one and save the other somewhere else. But when we're doing with, when you alter something that is in the DOM, those changes will take effect. Those changes will display. What I could do is I could clone this element, and then that clone, because it's a clone, it doesn't live in the node yet unless I put it there. It won't show up. Any other questions with modifying elements? What else? What's another way? What's something else that you would like to modify here? See if we can do it. Let's say, let's do this. Let's explore this again. Oh. Let's explore this again. Oh, I guess you just do console.dir. We'll compare it. Let's see what else we can modify, because once we have access to the object, then we can see what else could we modify. Class name, define height, left, data set, inner HTML, local name, shall, on copy and drag. Let's see. Parent, scroll with style. There's not much we can change. We can see that here also the ID attribute in HTML becomes a property in the object ID, which is that hidden false. Oh, let's try this one. This one is element, or this paragraph that hidden is true or false. What do you think will happen if I switch it to true? It won't show up. Let's try that. Let's do, after we change the text, let's need to remove these console logs. Let's do welcome para dot hidden equal to true. Let's go back here, refresh. Now the element is there, it's just hidden. So I changed the hidden property of the welcome element paragraph node or object or element I will prefer, like, in those ways of naming this, the more accurate way will be the node. We're changing the property of the welcome para node called hidden, and we're changing that to true, from false to true. What if I do yes?
I set it up in my client. It still alerts with that, with welcome para, but it doesn't lock the website. Or it doesn't
So what Douglas is saying, even though the element is hidden, you can still console log it or alert. In this case, you see, like, we have this console.dir, and I'm console logging the paragraph, and now I'm refreshing the page, but I'm still able to see the console log. That is because the node is hidden. The node is still in the DOM tree. It's still one of those nodes in the tree. Is hidden in the displaying phase of the website rendering. It's just like that node is still there. It's just not displaying. It's not being displayed because we set hidden to be true. Any element that you set hidden to be true will be hidden. Let's see if it appears here. If we do element and we go to the body, you see we have the p tag is still there. You could even see it in the source code. What do we note here? Even though it's there, but is there anything else different? How many attributes does this p tag have? Has 2. ID and hidden. Hidden is a kind of attribute that is, if it's true or false, we don't need to say hidden equal true. Hidden equal false. Similar to when we have an if statement that we don't want to say if this thing triple equal true. We could just say if this thing. Similar to that. Hidden will be true or false. If I remove it from here and I hit enter, then it appears back. So you could think about, like if you're building a game, you could use hidden to show something based on whether the user clicked in a certain place or not. Okay? You could think about you could have, like, if the user clicks a button to hide all the elements, it will just hide them, and if the button will become instead of a hide button, you will have a show button that is able to show and hide elements. And that's actually a good example of how some websites, I'm not sure if I have an example, that has a button for you to hide something and like get it back up. That's that one will be slightly different. But it's let's see, like let's see if we can find something like this, for instance. You see this thing that pops up here? It's likely that when I click here, then this becomes hidden false, so it displays, but it was hidden true. So that's it for now. Let's break out for lunch. Then after we come back, let's do the exit ticket, and then we can work on the lab. Mm-hmm.
Well, no, not even that. Right, basically the best thing to do is like actually going to the wall is something that's very like